we break the same law together. Marijuana, which unfortunately a lot of people aren't aware of, there's a terrible sentence, but marijuana is in the family of hallucinogens, or hallucinogens, whichever is correct. And it has, such as LSD and sacred mushrooms and peyote and different plants that primitive people have used for millennia, for insight to spiritual things, to visions. It's in that family, and there is something in marijuana useful and good, I believe. I also believe that as a young man, it changed my fix on society. It made me, I don't want to call myself cynical because I'm not. I believe the people who run these things on us are the cynics. But it made me skeptical. It made me question what was being handed to me. And I think it was a defining factor in my young life. I had these impulses to be rebellious, but there was never any logic or pattern of rationality to it. It was always just, I hate them. But this gave me the ability, the pot gave me the ability. I don't smoke it anymore. It's useless to me now. I found myself saying, what am I doing this for? But I must say that, and I don't want it to sound like an endorsement, because it's not, but I'm not going to lie, I think it changes your value system in a positive way. Used properly, because it is a self-limiting drug. It is a drug that should tell you when it's over.
Do you think you're as funny now as you were in the 70s and 60s?
I'm doing my best work. I'm the only one that can ever really be the judge, because I do it for myself. You know, the fact that the audience is there is wonderful, and nothing would be complete, couldn't do it without them. But I do it for me. And I'm thinking better than I ever have. And my observations, I think, stand out in better, relief against what I already know. That's what it is, about life. I found out now that I'm 53. You collect this sort of matrix of information, and it gets more textured and full as you get older, and therefore the things you see today are compared more accurately with the background stuff. And I think I'm having more fun with it than I ever have. I know that.
When you critique yourself, do you ever say, well, here are several instances where, yeah, I used words that some people think are dirty, but the way I constructed it, I was making a point, and I think it was also funny, but I gotta admit, here's a time when I was just scatological.
Yeah, now I want to clear up what you might mean by scatological. To me, scatological refers purely to bodily elimination. So if we're just talking about dirty words in general, it goes beyond that.
All right, expand it.
Okay, but I have definitely found there were times when I needed to raise my voice above the background noise. I think that's what a lot of these comedians are doing today. This is a very intrusive atmosphere we live in. Everything is being aimed at us, all sorts of messages. I mean, you can't go anywhere without some vested interest trying to get your attention. And so you have to raise your voice above the din to be heard, to get their attention so you can be heard. And that's what part of it is, I think. I have done that. And sometimes I've had to retrofit my rationale and find out, what it was. In other words, I would start out by saying something that was really empty of meaning or of saving grace, and then later on say, no, wait a minute now, and I see something in that. And if I just extend that rather rude opening into this, then there's a reason for that. Well, that's not trying to cover your tracks, I think, and maybe this is self-serving. I think that's what art is. I think art is an expression of something from the subconscious that you don't really have control over, just an unbridled expression, and then the order and the rationale appears later sometimes. I'm sure novelists get halfway in and they eliminate a whole character, or they find this guy's the hero of my story. It has to be that way, and I've done that. I've done things just to get their attention, which I hope most of the time I could later rationalize.
We're part of that cavalry charge.
Well, I walked, and Richard Pryor walked, and later guys have walked through the doors that Lenny Bruce opened up in the middle of all of his genius and torture that sort of went together. I don't know. That's certainly, I'm proud that I was able to somehow mix commercial success with ideas that certainly previously weren't that successful commercially. I don't know. I'm just happy that I was there. I don't have any idea how to answer the question, even if I were to be terrifically pretentious about it. It's for another person to judge.
I noticed that you've got some new targets in your site. Some targets that people might be surprised at because you see hypocrisy in it and contradictions in it, so you take off, at least in some ways, after feminists and after liberals.
Yeah. See, I'm just a believer that there are no absolutes, and liberal orthodoxy is as repugnant to me as conservative orthodoxy. I think there is great value in the feminine mystique and the feminine perspective on this planet. I think when male domination took over and the feminine perspective was put into eclipse brutally, that we lost something great about ourselves, we humans. And I'm a fan of and a supporter of women. But I don't like large groups of people who have an agenda, no matter how wonderful the agenda sounds. When I meet individuals, I think, do you ever notice you meet an individual and it's like all of the potential of humanity is in that person, and you see it and you know it and you feel it. There are exceptions, there are cruel and bad people, but most people are just great. But then when they get in groups, even two of them sometimes will say, gee, I like Bob, but you know, when he's with Susan, I really don't like him. 3 people, 4, 5, 10, now they have armbands, little hats, slogans, pamphlets, and an agenda. People in groups are dangerous, and I don't like fanatics. And so I'm trying to have a little contrast and perspective in how I view these people who tell you, this is the new orthodoxy, you have to live by this.
One of the things that really gets under your skin is euphemisms.
Well, euphemisms are just one form of language used to conceal meaning. To me, language is there to reveal and convey meaning and thought. And euphemisms exist in the opposite mode. You know, things like hearing impaired instead of deaf, partially sighted instead of partially blind. These words that hide reality from us. You know, politicians don't say anything anymore, they indicate. Well, he indicated to me that his judgment, not his decision, his judgment was that it had been an inappropriate thing to do. Well, it broke the law is what it did. It's discouraging that we have these terrific brains and we do this stuff to ourselves, you know?
He did cook that wonderful meal for free.